Welcome to the Real and Raw. I'm Lynn Serrano.
Bry guy.
Yeah, the Rye guy. We'll be right back after this. Welcome to a Monday after what in the United States here is that day after Super Bowl. And I was just asking Brian real quick if he watches Super Bowl every year or not. And I think this year we have like new Super Bowl fans because of somebody famous brought a few, new football fans. And then there's, I think, some people that are not football fans, but it's just the tradition of Super Bowl parties and, and different things like that. And so I was just, and then, you got the, whether you watch Super Bowl or not, if you're on Facebook or TikTok or whatever, you're going to see something about the Super Bowl or, social media kind of keeps us in the loop of things, whether you want to be in the loop or not.
Correct.
So
it's always going to contend with how you view things. That's the problem, is because if you have a certain bias or a certain view of somebody or something, you're going to have to contend with that in conjunction with what's new. You know what I mean? Like the people that are playing the game. Do you like the team? Do you like the players? Do you like where it's at? Are you upset because your team didn't get in? There's so many thought processes and
variables.
The one thing that I always conclude upon is that it's never going to be perfect for anybody. It's never going to be.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is that also though, just by allocating your time to watch the Super Bowl, for instance, you're kind of setting you're kind of you're deciding to take it on regardless of if it's what you want, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, that was a waste of time. Well, then you wasted your time. You know what I mean?
Some people like it just for the party, just to say, hey, it's another party, it's another get together,
Right.
And so,
and I think that and everybody's got an opinion and they're gonna share it, but it's never going to be perfect for anybody.
Yeah.
There might be a mutual understanding about, hey, in the history of the Super Bowl, here are the best halftime acts or whatever, which is all subjective, right? And obviously some artists are going to be more liked than others. Some artists are just more, they cross many more genres than some. But I've seen a little bit, and it's very easy to be a backseat driver. It's very easy to be what do they call it? A couch quarterback or something like that, where you're sharing your opinion and it's valid. And I'm like, wow, it seems like we got a lot of time for things that aren't going to change anyway.
Yeah, critics and
Yeah,
things
I
like that.
mean, and it's like, were you going into it with an optimistic view anyway, or were you going in it just to shed some light on something that you didn't like anyway?
Yeah.
And in that cesspool of opinions and all of that subjectivity that I frankly don't have the time for.
Yeah.
I look at anything like this, like beginner's mind, where I'm not going back and assessing, years past of what they did, because I think that tampers with the experience of it. You know what I mean? Because now the only way you're taking it in is, this was better, that wasn't, and it's like, are you there to enjoy it or are you there to assess it?
Yeah,
I don't
and
think you
people
can do it
forget.
all.
Yeah, and you brought a good point that sometimes people forget that why should everything be expected to be the way it was before,
Right.
when it's like, then why go if it's going to be the same way every time? You're expecting the same experience, so I mean, there's no point. I mean, things should be a little bit different so that you're enjoying a new experience. Everything, like you said, like your business. If you did every wedding the same way,
Right.
then what's the point in going to another one of Brian's experiences? When you experienced it once, then there's no point in going again. I mean,
That's right.
it just, and then if you're not keeping an open mind, you're not hearing or getting any value out of anything. It's like, why take a course if you're not going to get the other piece that you need. If you
Yeah.
already think you know everything in the course, then and you're still failing, then you're not getting everything
Yeah.
because you're not open.
Well, and it just seems like, leave it up to a Super Bowl for people to flex their real opinion, as if like they need any platform to do that.
Mhm.
Now it's something that was witnessed by everybody versus if somebody has a certain viewpoint, and another person doesn't because they view somebody a different way. But then you bring it to the halftime show, for instance. We all saw it. Everybody's going to have their own beliefs and understanding. And to me personally, I think it's a waste of time to assess and get into this. It's kind of like politics, right? Our show is never about that. I'm not a politically correct person, but it's like number one, if somebody's there to share their opinion, that's one thing. But if they're there to share their opinion and win you over to their view, that crosses the line. There's a difference
Yeah.
between having a hearty conversation where people feel valued and they feel like they can share and be heard. There's also another thing. It's like, no, you're gonna listen to my point of view, or it's like you almost have to. They have to win you over, to make their argument valid.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a total waste of time. Like I'm a big football person, but at the same time, the pageantry of it, how they chose to do what they did in the city, and this is aside alone from the teams and whether I, am rooting anybody on, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's how did they paint that canvas, so to speak?
Yeah.
You've got the entertainment capital of the world, where people go every year, hundreds of millions of people go every year from all over the world.
Right.
And with those resources, and I know that they're not just flipping a coin to determine where the Super Bowl's being held. They don't do that. They do it years in advance, kind of like the Olympics, right?
Right.
Where they choose
Right.
places for the Olympics. They do all their research and all that in advance,
Right.
And so, I've seen some stuff, and it's so easy, And then there was that moment, with the head coach and his player, and all the memes and a little bump and all that, and I'm just like, that's the classic, keyboard warrior,
Yeah.
like they have no, and it's very easy to take a picture of somebody's face or,
Yep.
oh, that wasn't right, or, contend with their character. And it's like, we weren't there. We didn't know
Right.
what kind of, I mean, you're playing for a freaking Super Bowl, for Pete's sakes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the closest we would play for a Super Bowl in our lives?
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
tensions are high and things are high, and you taking somebody's worst moment and and exasperating it to, their finest moment. It is what it is. And, the media can really tear
Oh,
people down in a heartbeat, and
well, they have a
I
certain way of framing it, you know what I mean? Like,
mhm,
they didn't show his expressions throughout the whole game, or they didn't show him when he made a great play, or when he's
no,
smiling or whatever throughout the
no,
course of the game. They had to isolate on that one moment,
yeah,
but they never showed, with his you know, his music superstar lady friend. They
yeah,
never showed that stuff, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
to further their confirmation bias or their viewpoint.
yeah,
So anything could be slanted any which way, and then you add a little copy to it, and then
yeah.
you can get people to think whatever.
Yeah, and that's how the media can be. I mean, they can take anything they want and make it be whatever they want. And I just kind of I think that's why we don't have so many good politicians and good people doing good things, because they do get worried how they're going to be seen. And not that you should worry about stuff, but anything could be taken that you make out there and can be sliced to be said way what out of content.
And
I
and everybody's going to watch the. I mean, there's people that watch the Super Bowl strictly for the ads, or they're not a football person, but they have other friends, and it's that whole experiential thing
Yep,
where people are getting together, and it's something that brings people together. All of
right.
those are valid, but I think if there's too much emphasis on like, the, you know, what I'm trying to get at is that the Super Bowl is more than just a game.
Yeah.
It's the
It's an
advertisements, it's
experience,
the
yeah.
end of the season, it's all these things,
Mhm.
and if you go so hard on one, I think you're missing out on the whole pageantry and how it made you feel and the culmination of these 2 teams and what they did and what they're
Yeah.
playing for.
Yeah.
I think that there's a greater narrative than, oh, the commercial sucked. Wow, okay,
Yeah.
so that was your whole identity throughout the game?
Yeah.
That whole 4 hour use of your time was kind of wasted because of one thing,
Well, it
you
was
know?
funny because I was working at the hotel, so I kinda had it just, like, on my phone, and I just would look every now and then, and it was, like, at the end there, I was, like, could look at the score, and I was like, "Oh, San Francisco's gonna win," and I'm like, "Oh, wait a second. Wait, they're gonna run it. Oh, it's gonna run out, and San Francisco's gonna win. No, they're gonna tie they're gonna go overtime," and, and I'm looking over, and I didn't see when they got the touchdown or whatever they did or whatever, and I'm like, "Wait, they won. How did they win?" I'm like, of all times, play the replay so I could see it, and
Mhm.
kind of thing. And so, but it's one of those things where it's just an experience. And I remember years past where my dad and I, when New York's been in it or something, and we, and it's been an amazing thing from seconds and seconds, and amazing just last minute touchdowns or 3 points or whatever. And
Right.
it's just, it's the who, you can remember who you were talking to or who you were with, or it's just, it's the experience and who you're spending time with, and just, getting together. And
Well, and
it's
how
almost,
well, it's like, what did you go into the game for? You know what I
yeah,
mean? It was it to just be negative and upset and mad and
yeah,
be like, oh, those ads sucked or whatever. It's like, wow, what a I mean, the
yeah,
final game of the year and you followed everything leading up to now, and your dirty laundry is starting to come out, so to speak.
yeah,
That it's like, why would you follow the whole season and
yeah,
enjoy it? And then all of a sudden it's like the only reason why you watch this is one thing, and that's okay if it is, but I think it's very shallow. Uh, you know, uh,
I think it's just at the end of the year, I think you see the sportsmanship. And I one thing I do love though is when I do see, I think it's really cool to see when people's teams didn't come in and
right,
they're watching and rooting for another team that they didn't like, but
right,
then they're rooting for them in the Super Bowl. I like that because it shows that you do have good sportsmanship to say, well, my team didn't win. I'm gonna support this one. And I like to see that because then it can show that you could have good sportsmanship for a team if your team isn't in it.
yeah,
It shows that you can at least, it's for the game, it's for
mhm.
seeing a good game, and or going for the underdog or whatever.
And
It's
I
just,
think if somebody has a certain I don't know, preconceived notion of the game, or a filter, if you will, about how they look at the game, given the people that are playing or the other influences such as music stars or whoever's involved.
yeah,
uh, what a very shallow way of looking at it, where it's like, oh, I don't like this particular person that has nothing to do with the game because they're dating this person, right?
yeah.
And I'm like, wow, your whole experience is wrapped around you not liking this person's music.
Yeah. Well, my
You
son-in-law
know,
really is a football fan, period. I mean, he does fantasy football, the whole nine. Yeah. And that, I think that's what I love about him. I mean, he's got my grandson playing football too, but that's what I mean. A real football fan really will watch football just to watch the team, just for the game, just for the love of the football, love of the sport. And I think that I admire and love to see those people, watch the sport because it is for the sport. And that's a good sportsman person,
right?
not somebody that's so biased to just one team and screw everybody else. I don't think that person can even play fantasy football because they're so fun. I guess that goes to show a person that's just open-minded to me,
Right,
to say that it's the love of the sport and really being a good sportsman,
right.
to be open-minded, to say, hey, that's a good play, even if it's not on my team. You got to love the sport and love it for what it is, gameplay,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
And I think
well,
that goes,
I mean, there.
that
Go ahead. Go ahead. Lynn.
I was going to say, and that spreads on to a good message for life. Because if you can be a team player in that and be open-minded, that's a great person in life to
Yeah.
me. And that to me is the point of speaking about this. And that's the point I wanted to get to this point, is to say, if you could really see the passion in a sport or anything, That's a well-rounded person to see a perspective of every way. That's why they got the cameras and the replays and all these different things. And like they said, they've got different rules for overtime of the way they're going to look at that perspective, and they called it, hey, it's a new game right here, you know,
Right.
and to deal with the game of life, and just to see, it's just like if you had a bypass, you got a new life. You can't go back to the raw meat and the raw steak. Okay. You're going to have to eat vegetables and fruit, things like that. And I'm just saying, if you can have that different perspective to say, you know what, I think it's good to be grateful to have something than nothing at all,
Right. Yep.
So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that also though too, it's being in Wisconsin, I mean, we have our favorites, uh,
Nah, I haven't been there. I
but
wouldn't know what you're talking about.
we have our favorites, and I don't, I think that, and I'm an anomaly when it comes to college football because I like a different team than most. Um, but I think too is that when I look at, I'm always going to be rooting for the underdog.
Right.
It might not necessarily be the team because I mean these teams have millions of dollars that they're working with for salary cap, and they want the best players to do the best things. But I think that there's also team chemistry. When I look at the teams, and it's like how they assembled, and one of the quarterbacks that was playing yesterday, he didn't get drafted in his draft. I mean, and here he's second year in the league, he's getting paid less money than college players that have never played a single snap, and they're getting NIL money. You know what I mean? And it's like
Yeah.
you're going to the Super Bowl, undrafted, second year in the league, and you're taking a team to the Super Bowl.
Well,
And
yeah.
you're getting paid, and obviously, like, your rookie deal is, you're either, that's your test, that's your soundboard. You're either
Yeah.
going to excel to a bigger contract after that is done, or you're not, and but that humility, where somebody comes from, you can have some teams that are very arrogant, full of themselves, and when they don't win, it's the biggest laughing stock
Yeah.
because their mind is not on the game. Their mind might be individually, or it might be how much money I'm going to get from royalties.
Well,
It's instead of individual play, it's collaborative play. It's you're doing it together versus one person.
well,
And I
and
think
that's
some teams make that apparent.
yeah, and like I said, it does get to be where you can see the passion of the team and the coach and the
Yep.
and the team player and the camaraderie, and that I think that's where it becomes infectious for the fans.
Yep.
They know, the fans feed. That's why Seattle, they're called the 12th, the 12th,
Yeah.
because
12th man.
yeah, 12th man, because they make their fans feel the part. They're fueled by them, and that's a big deal. And that was smart on their part to do that.
And
I
I
don't know
think
why any other team didn't think of doing that before they did, but
And I think that there's a distinction too, especially when we have these teams over the years, and it doesn't matter the sport, where they start creating, they just start creating the standard,
yeah,
where it's like they win all these championships over and over again. Is that if you can still root for them, knowing that it's like I'd like to see somebody new. That's what I'm speaking about, is their
right,
character.
right,
You know what I mean? They're not arrogant about it.
right,
They're very talented at what they do, but they get up and do the work every day versus feeling like, well, you know who I am? And then
right.
it should just be given to them. Like their swagger. Are you humble or are you arrogant?
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, let's go to Keanu Reeves. I mean, like,
Yep.
there's just some people that, say, I wouldn't be where I am or have what I have if it wasn't for you.
Yep.
It's the things of appreciating the people that support you
Yep.
and view you, and and know who you are and support you. I mean, it just comes down to knowing who you are, but knowing why you do it,
Yeah.
and the purpose, and doing it because you like to do it whether they show up or not. So
And I
it
and I
just
would say it's
reminds
like
me to the Real and Raw show.
and I would say it also goes back to never forget where you came from.
Exactly.
I mean, there's very few people that ever get into professional athletics, and obviously every single one of them is a little bit different in terms of the percentages. Like the rules are different per professional sport, but the numbers are very low. And so to never forget where you came from, and so like when you go back, like let's say you go back to a diner or whatever, you're just the same person, but everybody perceives you as this superstar.
Right.
But you're just like another person that's ready to pay for their meal and get their groceries and do whatever they got to do. And so you just never gave up on yourself. You played the
Right.
game, so to speak, to go through the different ranks and to get an opportunity, you know? And I think so many people are not willing to do what it takes to go where they want to go, and then it's so much easier to try to it's like the crab analogy, right? Where
Right.
the one crab that finds a way out because there's no top on it is pulled down by those that just want you to be like everybody else. And I think that there's a lot to be said for it, but the backstory of every person, I think, the more times that they might have the best team on the planet, but number one, do they function cohesively as a group or as a team, or is there just a lot of individual players that don't want to collaborate as a team?
Well,
They're kind of doing it on their own, and it appears because they can't get along with anybody, or they're always in conflict with their coaches.
and remember, if they're doing it, they should be doing it not because of the camera or because there's the fans. They should be doing it in practice. They should be doing it on and off the court. They
Yep.
should be consistent to be that that they are always, not just for, you know,
Well, and you bring
for
up a great
performance.
point too, is that there's a lot of quotes in history about what you do behind the scenes should portray what you do
Exactly.
in person.
Right.
And
So
it's
it
like, are
should
you the same person behind the scenes is on stage,
exactly.
so to speak, or are you different?
Right. So don't be one way for one and be different for the other.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And so the thing is, I'm finding that you have a standard for one and then you make a difference for the other. You're either that person through and through or you're not, because when people see your character flaw
yep.
for being one way and then they see you're being a character for a different way, then you weren't an authentic person. I mean, they can see right through that there's a character flaw there.
Well, and more times than not, so that's when somebody makes excuses, gets offended,
Absolutely.
and that's when hypocrisy and all of
Absolutely.
that comes into play because and obviously from the person's side, they may see that their identity is the same, but
Oh,
that
yeah.
that also might inject some narcissism in there as well because they're not aware of seeing it. Like
Absolutely.
how they project themselves is different than how they're being perceived,
Absolutely.
you know, versus being the same person, you know, and
Absolutely.
I think it's also too is like like our identities personally and professionally. I think
Right.
that this day and age, I mean, there was a period of time in history where, you know, your personal brand was different than your business brand, but now I think it's one and the
No.
same.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You gotta carry that through and through, so it's not scrutinized, but yeah, but when you start saying it's because of this and it's because of that, no one because of what somebody else did should never make you say something out of your mouth that anybody else should provoke you to do. If it's out of there's no way in your integrity that you're going to change that because of somebody's reactions. It's
Right,
on you,
right,
and you're using the excuse of somebody else's actions for you. It's on you, and it's always going to be on you. You
yeah,
never had to make anybody else's actions change yours.
right, yeah.
So,
And
um,
I think if it does change you, there's something deep within your belief system that
absolutely,
why would you get rattled unless it's you'll never get rattled if you're firm in your belief system.
absolutely.
You'll either resonate with what's going on or totally disregard it because that's not you.
Absolutely. And on
But
that note, we really need to start wrapping it up here. So anything closer there, sir? I didn't mean to cut you off. We
no,
can go on.
I would just say is that events like the Super Bowl or whatever. It's everybody's got a voice and they're going to share it. Everybody's got an opinion and they're going to share it, and they should. I just think though that if you allow the opinions of others to get in the way of just experiencing something, or just to, maybe eat some bad food and hang out, I think we take ourselves way too seriously. And I know I need to work on that every day. But people have opinions; they're allowed to share them. But it's why are we being so, I don't know, judgmental on things? Like my view is right, your view is wrong, instead of it just being a view. Like, why do we have to get so specific and hardened as a person on a halftime show, and if it
Yeah.
sucked or not? Like, that just, to me, I don't look at it that way. I'm just like, man, was it entertaining? Was it fun? Did I get up and dance? Did it, you know what I mean? Like, I'm looking at it from beginner's mind, not comparison contrast, and sitting in that world for 4 hours.
Yeah.
But
I
that's
was
what
actually happy and excited because I actually had personal friends that were there,
that's awesome.
and I got to see pictures of them, being there, and I was very happy for them. So I kept like looking at Facebook, see if they posted anything else. So,
Yeah.
but it's just, again, it's one of those things where um, I think it's real important to realize that it's the experience that we're having, and remembering the moments that we have with these people, and always looking at the bright side of the moments we have with people, and not letting the petty shit that in 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 10 years, that stuff's not going to make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, I could see somebody going in that just by default, and this makes no sense to me, just by your team not playing in the Super Bowl, you could have a certain view. And I'm like, well, then why even watch?
Yeah.
Because you're going to be fighting all of this the whole time. I mean, there is proof and evidence. It's fact that your team doesn't play in the game, right? But yet you're going to have that same mindset going into watching a game. It's just like, well, I could have saved 4 hours of your time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because there are only two teams. Either
Right.
your team gets in or your team doesn't.
Right.
But to hold on to that grudge and whatnot just seems to be a waste of time.
It's
You know.
sad. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that's what
Well,
I got.
anyways, another year down, and they always got next year, right?
Yes. Right.
Next season.
Yep.
All right. Well, um, as always, it's a pleasure to do a show with you, and I'll see
Likewise.
you next week.
Bye,
Have a good
everyone.
one,
Thanks for
everybody.
being here.
Love you. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.